morning fog hung low over Elkmont, shrouding the remnants of the once thriving logging town in a blanket of mist. Most days, folks quietly went about their routines of farming and tending to their homesteads, with each day blending seamlessly into the next. But today was different. Today, the air buzzed with an undercurrent of unease. Amos Harper stood on the front porch of his modest cabin. He gazed out at the forest, where the first rays of sunlight began to peek over the summit of the Smoky Mountains in the distance. His wife, Mary, emerged from the cabin, her eyes still heavy with sleep.
"What's on your mind, Amos?"
she asked, knowing her husband's ways and routines better than he realized. "Well, I was just thinking about that meeting today," Amos replied, his voice tinged with apprehension. Mary nodded, understanding the weight of his words. Those government men had been prowling and snooping around Elkmont, Cades Cove, and several other areas recently, measuring and surveying with their fancy tools and such. And now today, they were holding a meeting down at the Baptist church, and everyone knew what it was about. Wagging tongues and rumors had been swirling for weeks, but today, the mountain folks would hear it for themselves. As the couple made their way down to the church, they were joined by other townsfolk, each face marked with worry and uncertainty. The old church stood as a relic of Elkmont's vibrant past. It had been the site of some of the town's most glorious memories, but everyone knew there wouldn't be any preaching about heaven or streets of gold today. Inside, the pews filled quickly. Silas Thompson, the church deacon, sat in the front row, his gnarled hands resting on a cane. Preacher Tate stood near the podium, offering comforting words to those who sought his guidance. The air was thick with anticipation as Penelope Moore, the local school's only teacher, took a seat towards the back with her eyes scanning the room. The meeting commenced with a hush as a representative from the National Park Service, a tall man with neatly combed hair and a stern demeanor, took the podium. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Jenkins, and I'm here on behalf of the National Park Service. Now, I know you folks don't want to hear me stand up here and beat around the bush, so I'm going to get straight to the point and the purpose of this meeting. On behalf of the United States government, the Park Service began conducting studies here in Tremont, Smokemont, Cades Cove, the Sugarlands, and, as you already know, here in Elkmont as well. Now, it's our belief that Elkmont and all the other places I just mentioned should be preserved so the coal and the timber companies can't do any more damage to them. And we'd like to preserve the natural beauty and the historical significance of these mountains. To be quite frank with you, we intend to turn this area into a national park." A murmur ran through the crowd. "A national park?" Old Man Peters spoke loudly from the crowd. "What in Sam Hill is that?" "Now hear me out, sir," the government official continued. "This plan will require the acquisition of all land currently occupied by residents. Now, we understand this is a difficult proposition, but we believe it's in the best interest of preserving the Smoky Mountains for future generations." Silas Thompson stood, his voice strong despite his age. "The government has lost their minds. What about our heritage and our homes? You're asking us to give up everything we built for a blasted park?" Jenkins nodded sympathetically. "I understand your concerns, Mr. Thompson, but I assure you that the Park Service is prepared to offer fair compensation and assistance with relocation. We're committed to working with you all to ensure a smooth transition." The room erupted into a heated discussion. "I ain't never once heard such hogwashing all my life," shouted one man. But not everyone was opposed. Some saw the government proposition as a lifeline, a chance to start a new life. This would be an opportunity to move down the mountain to a town. And Preacher Tate stepped forward, raising his hands for silence. "Now, brethren, friends, and neighbors, let's not forget who we are. This community has faced hardships before, and we've always come through by standing together. Let's hear all sides and make a decision that honors our past and looks to our future." And Amos felt a tug on his sleeve. He turned to see Mary's worried face.
What are we going to do?
And just then, Amos rose to speak. Now, I don't believe selling our land is the answer. Elkmont has a soul and a history that can't be bought or sold. We need to fight to keep our homes and our way of life. And if we stand together, we can make our voices heard. Just then, the government man shot back. Well now, sir, that's mighty noble of you to speak so strongly about the value of this land. And I assure you, the United States government feels the same way and will make sure that it's preserved for generations to enjoy. Every property owner in this room will receive a generous payment for your land within the next week. And after that, well, you'll have 14 days to vacate. This concludes this meeting. Thank you all for coming. Those words echoed across the room, and the stunned and shocked faces of the mountaineers were frozen as the government officials quickly exited and disappeared down the dusty road in their shiny new automobile. Mary looked at Amos with fear in her eyes.
They can't do this to us, can they? Where will we go?
The days following the big meeting down at the church were tense and filled with uncertainty. The once tight-knit community of Elkmont now found itself bitterly divided. Amos Harper felt the growing discord down at Tompkins Mill, where several men were already talking about the checks that came in the mail. "Pennies, I tell you! They giving us pennies for our land," one man shouted. "You can't fight the government. A man just has to take what they give you, and that's all there is to it," another replied. Later that day at the general store, Amos overheard a heated argument between two old friends, Thomas Baker and John Wilson. "Well, we'd be fools not to take that deal," Thomas argued. His face was flushed with frustration. "They're offering good money, more than we could ever make by staying here. And I tell you, it's a chance to start fresh in a town, or even a city." John shook his head vehemently. "And leave behind everything my family built? My great-grandpap settled here over 100 years ago. This land is our heritage, our home, I tell you. You can't put a price on that." Back at the church, Preacher Tate was trying to calm a group of elders, but his words fell on deaf ears. Miss Grayson, a longtime church member, was near tears. "If we leave, what will happen to our church?" Across the aisle, Mr. Thompson stood with his arms crossed. "Well, we can always find a new church in town. This building ain't nothing but sticks. The church is in our hearts, and right now, what matters is our family's future, not clinging to the past." And Preacher Tate raised his hands, and his voice was strained. "Brothers and sisters, please, let's not forget that we're all neighbors and friends. We all need to find a way to come together, not tear each other apart. We're all here because we care about Elkmont and about our future. And we need to listen to each other, even if we don't agree. Let's try to understand where everybody's coming from." And just then, Old Man Willis spoke. "Now, Reverend Tate, you know as well as I do, we've all been struggling for years. And this offer from the Park Service is a chance to start over, to give our children a better life. And if you ask me, the best thing for you'uns to do is to cash those checks and start packing." And that evening, as Amos sat on the porch with Mary, he voiced his concerns. "I don't know how we're going to get through this, Mary. The town split right down the middle, and even families are arguing amongst themselves about what to do." Mary nodded, with her eyes filled with worry.
I saw Miss Thompson and her daughter arguing in the market today. It's like everyone's forgotten how to talk to each other without shouting.
"Yeah, the road ahead is uncertain, but you know as well as I do, the common man don't stand nary a chance against the government. But my pa and his afore him weren't nary the kind of men to just back down without a fight, and that blood still flows in me. And the way I see it, if the government's going to take everything we got, we might as well fight and give 'em hell all the way to the end." In the days that followed, an exodus was underway all over the mountains. One by one, families and their animals loaded down with all their earthly possessions began to make the dusty trek down the mountain trail to nearby towns such as Maryville, Townsend, and Gatlinburg. Nearly everyone in the Sugarlands, Cades Cove, Elkmont, and other communities accepted the government's offers for their homesteads. The Park Service allowed a few families lifetime leases on their homes, and in the end, there were only a few families who vowed to fight the government in court. And Amos watched with a heavy heart as his neighbors packed up their belongings. He saw the pain in their eyes, their reluctance masked by forced smiles and hopeful talks of new beginnings. The once charming community of Elkmont was now nearly empty. Preacher Tate was one of the last to go. He stopped by Amos and Mary's cabin to say goodbye. "I hate to leave, Amos," Preacher Tate said, his voice heavy with sorrow, "but I have to think of my family." "Well, I understand, Preacher," Amos replied, clasping his hand, "and we'll miss you." You're doing the right thing, Amos. Stand your ground, and I'll be praying for you." The next few months, Amos and Mary Harper and others like the Oliver family over in Cades Cove fought the United States government in court in an effort to keep their homes. In many ways, it was just one final act of refusing to voluntarily bow down to politicians, much in the same way their Scotch-Irish ancestors refused to bow down to kings and queens. To fight, resist, and even if it meant defeat, was just in their blood. Finally, the day of judgment came in federal court, and the courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the verdict. Amos and Mary Harper sat side by side, their hands tightly clasped. They had fought tirelessly, but as the gavel struck, the reality of their situation hit them with a crushing force.
In the matter of the United States government versus Amos and Mary Harper, the court finds in favor of the government. The land known as Elkmont is to be acquired by the National Park Service, and all its current residents are to vacate immediately.
The words echoed in Amos' mind. A final, devastating blow. He looked over at Mary. Her eyes were filled with unshed tears. They had just lost everything. In the months that followed, they found a small apartment down in Maryville and took whatever jobs they could find. Amos worked down at an aluminum factory. The noise and the pace was a stark contrast to the quiet rhythm of life in Elkmont. Mary found work down at a local diner. Her days spent serving strangers instead of teaching the children she had once known so well. And life in Maryville was hard. The apartment felt cramped and foreign, a far cry from their cabin that was surrounded by the beauty of the mountains. The routine of work and sleep left little room for anything else, and their hearts ached for the home they had lost, the land that had been stolen from them. And years passed, and the pain dulled, but it never fully disappeared. Amos and Mary, and so many other families who were forced to leave the mountains, learned to adapt, but a part of them always remained in places like Elkmont and Cades Cove. And every now and then, they would sometimes drive up to the edge of the national park and gaze at the land that had once been theirs, the sight of tourists wandering through the area, oblivious to the history and the struggle, was a bitter pill to swallow. And nowadays, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park is a picturesque spot for hikers and nature lovers, a place to admire the scenery and take photos before hustling down to Gatlinburg for moonshine tastings and roller coaster rides over at Dollywood. Few, if any, of these tourists know the true story of how this land was stolen and the fight that had taken place to preserve it. And those old cabins, which were once home to all the families, all their hopes and dreams, are now just remnants of a past life whose history has been sanitized for the enjoyment of strangers.